George Pickens went down with a late practice injury on Friday, and now he's questionable. Devonta Smith has been cleared to play, and DJ Moore is questionable. This is why we wait till the end of the week, every week, to go through every matchup to find the must-start sit wide receivers. So make sure to go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support, because I'm the only YouTuber working on a Saturday to get you this type of content. So getting into our first matchup, the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers here. And Jerry Jeudy at this point, you cannot bench Jerry Jeudy, guys. This guy's run that he's on with Jameis Winston, it's been so clear that he's the #1 wide receiver for Jameis Winston, especially now that Cedric Tillman will be missing his second straight game because of that concussion that he suffered against the Steelers on that Thursday night game. So with Cedric Tillman out, the way Judy's been playing, you cannot sit a guy who's on a heater right now. And then I'd say Elijah Moore, at this point, is a better, more trustworthy flex option than George Pickens is. Look, this injury with George Pickens, I've been saying this all year. Whenever a wide receiver goes down with a hammy or a groin or a quad injury late in the week in practice, they're usually not going to play. And if they do play, it's probably going to be very, very limited. So I just prefer Elijah Moore at this point over George Pickens, since we know that Cedric Tillman is out, and we saw what Elijah Moore did last week without Cedric Tillman. I think Elijah Moore is a mid to high-end flex option this week, whereas Pickens is well below him. And I would say that Calvin Austin, as a result of this, has been cleared by the concussion protocol, and he's going. And again, with a limited or out George Pickens, this is probably the best they've got at wide receiver this week. So with Calvin Austin, I do think he's a mid-end flex option this week, and I'm not playing Van Jefferson. You cannot pay me to play Van Jefferson. He is so bad, and I'm not playing Mike Williams either. I think Calvin Austin is the name that you want. Dropping down to our next matchup, the New Orleans Saints at the New York Giants. There's no must-starts in here, and realistically, Malik Nabers is probably not going to play. He had a practice downgrade on Friday. He was limited Thursday and then downgraded to out of practice on Friday. So the chances that he plays are probably very, very slim at this point. So I would say even if he does play, he's not considered a must-start. This guy has not been good since the month of September. His floor is relatively stable, sticking around like 8 to 10 points, but that's basically what he's been hitting, is a lot of floor play. A lot of the ceiling games, they're gone at this point. So with Malik Nabers, you may convince me that Marquez Valdes-Scantling, even if Nabers goes, is the better play. There's certainly more upside in this one. Obviously, the floor is not nearly as safe because he can get you 0 points very, very easily. But against the Saints, against the Giants defense, I like the matchup here with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So I think they're basically both in the same tier at this point. But again, I don't think Malik Nabers is going to play in this game. But that doesn't mean I'm playing Wandale or Darius Slayton for the New York Giants, and I'm not playing Cedric Wilson either. The New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins this week. I would say that Tyreek Hill is a must-start. Now, most of the time, I've been reluctant to put Tyreek Hill as a must-start because I just don't think that his ceiling is very high. And even last week, I said after that game on Thursday versus the Green Bay Packers, if you actually watch the game, he did not get that touchdown pass. It was the luckiest tip off of Jonnu Smith or somebody else, and it fell right into Tyreek's lap. That was not to Tyreek Hill. It wasn't a long ball. It was a very, very lucky play. But this week, the matchup versus the Jets, if it matters at all, but Sauce Gardner's already had a bad year, but he's out. So Tyreek Hill should have a pretty good matchup in this game. I would say he's a must-start considering the wide receiver landscape. And I would say Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams at this point, they're both looking at as high-end flex options. Honestly, Davante Adams may be the better option moving forward. Now, this is something I predicted when I called Davante Adams a buy low trade target earlier this year, that I believed at some point in the year he would become the favorite of Aaron Rodgers. Well, that's already happened. It's a done deal. He is the favorite of Aaron Rodgers at this point. Wilson's not, he hasn't, lost tremendous amount of targets. He's still getting, 8 to 10 targets per game, but he's not getting much downfield. So with Garrett Wilson, I just don't think his floor is very safe, where I think Devontae's is very safe, but the upside with Garrett Wilson, I still think is a little bit higher, which is why I'd still prefer to play Garrett Wilson just for upside purposes. And Jalen Waddle is basically in their same tier. Last week I wasn't as discouraged as a lot of people were. Obviously, Waddle coming off the big week 2 weeks ago. And then last week they go to Green Bay. He's trying to catch a rock, and he's from Miami. And these guys are like, well, we don't play good in cold weather. Well, it's back at home. It's versus the Jets. I think this is a good matchup here for Waddle, so I think he's definitely playable. The Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. I will tell you this. Jags options, if you want to go with Brian Thomas Jr., you knock yourself out. I'm not playing any Jags options because they've got Mac Jones, who is an XFL quarterback. This is not going to be good. Brian Thomas Jr., I guess, is a low-end flex option because he has big play upside, but where's the big play been with Mac Jones? Nowhere. Because it doesn't exist. So I just don't see Brian Thomas Jr. as much more than a deep shot to take if you're in deeper leagues. And I would say Calvin Ridley and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine are both high-end plays this week. Calvin Ridley, I think the matchup's great versus Jacksonville. He's the one usually getting the most amount of targets. Calvin Ridley should be getting 10 targets in this game. So I just like the matchup to take advantage of. High-end flex because he doesn't have tremendously safe floor. Whereas with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, again, I just am not going to fight it. I don't know how it's happening. It doesn't make much sense. But Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is making the most of like 3 catches per game. He's had 8 touchdowns the last 8 games. It's absolutely crazy. So stay in the Flames because the matchup is fantastic. Atlanta Falcons at the Minnesota Vikings this week. With Justin Jefferson and Drake London, you just go ahead and play these guys. They both have great matchups here. Drake London he had almost 100 receiving yards last week, just didn't get in the end zone with a big play. It's always possible, and maybe Kirk Cousins can fire it up and give it like one last go for a revenge game narrative. It's possible. I'm not counting on it especially, but I do think Drake London is a good play. And then Darnell Mooney and Jordan Addison, I think, are great flex options this week. I think they're both high end. Like I said, the matchup is great for both of them. Now, obviously, I prefer Sam Darnold and what he's got going for him right now, but I do think that Mooney has just been more consistent as far as getting target share. Now, Addison has definitely gotten more and more over the weeks, but with Jordan Addison, I just don't know if I can see him having as safe of a floor. So it really comes down to a ceiling battle here, where I think they both have the basically equivalent high ceilings, about 20 points, whereas I do think that Mooney's floor is a lot more reliable at this point. And I'm not playing Ray, and I'm not playing Jalen Naylor either. The Carolina Panthers at the Philadelphia Eagles this week. A.J. Brown is obviously must start. You fire him up. The matchup is tremendous. I get it. It may not be a ceiling week because Devonta Smith is back, and that's why he's the best flex option of the bunch. But A.J. Brown is definitely must start. Devonta Smith, you can play him as soon as he gets back, which is this week. I'm not saying he's a must start. Devonta Smith, I pointed out on my live stream on Friday night, which is, Devonta Smith, like the 3 games that he's had single-digit performances, they've all been blowouts. And I expect this one to be a blowout here. So there's a possibility that he busts for sure, but I do think that he's the better option than Adam Thielen and Leggett because I think that they're going to get choked out in this game. Like, the Panthers have been playing much better football, but they have not run into a buzzsaw like this. Philly's a buzzsaw right now, and I think they're going to get crushed by the Philadelphia Eagles this week. So I would just rather play an Eagles option than I would with a Panthers option, but both of those guys are still definitely playable, and Jalen Coker is doubtful in this game. I'm not going to play him. The Las Vegas Raiders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, baby. Mike Evans is obviously a playable guy. Mike Evans, you do not doubt, a future Hall of Famer. This guy goes into your lineup again because it's a great matchup, very similar to last week where he ended up having a really good performance in fantasy. You always play Mike Evans because now, especially with no Chris Godwin, he's the clear number 1. And then Jacoby Myers is injured right now. This guy is questionable heading into the week. He has an ankle injury, which is what he was dealing with before, a month or 2 ago in the midseason where he missed 3 games. And at that time, they said, oh, he's going to be fine. Well, he misses the next 3 games. Coach Pierce came out yesterday and said, yeah, he's ready to go. He gets a limited practice day on Friday, so I'm not exactly believing your word, bro. He already missed 3 games earlier in the year because of the same deal. So if he plays, obviously I like the matchup here. I want to play Jacoby Myers, and it's good because it's a noon kickoff game Central Time. So you're not going to have to make a decision here at 3 o'clock or at the Sunday night game. You can easily find out whether Jacoby's playing, but if he does play, I think he's a good play. And Trey Tucker is equally as good of a play if Jacoby Myers does not go. He's got big play upside and the capability of handling 8 targets if Jacoby Myers misses this game. And I'm not playing either other Tampa wide receiver. I just haven't seen enough of it yet. And I'll tell you what I am doing right now is drafting playoff best ball teams on Underdog, because I just don't like the fantasy season coming up to an end here. And the reality is Underdog is awesome. So they do these best ball tournaments where you could get in on and draft players that are making the NFL playoffs and then playing in leagues where you have some big potential high reward leagues you could get into. This is what I love to do after the fantasy season is over. And if you haven't gotten in on one and you want to join one of those drafts today, go down in the comments and grab the link that's there and use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. They will match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you get into your first playoff best ball tournament using code FFN. The Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals is our next matchup. And listen, I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a must start just because of the efficiency of what's been happening between him and Geno over the past month. Like he's on heater, but not necessarily because he's just like getting a consistent target share or consistently getting in the end zone. He's just like getting the job done. Like, and he's doing well yards after the catch wise as well and getting downfield targets. DK was just outside must-start territory because I don't believe dude's fully healthy. Even though he was cleared to go this week, I just don't think he's fully healthy. And just based on the fact that it hasn't hit yet, I don't think he's a must-start play. Like, I could definitely name some guys that I would play over DK Metcalf, like Jackson Smith-Njigba. So, I don't think that DK is a must-start, but he definitely is a high-end flex, and one I prefer 100% over Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is not my favorite play this week. I always go back and forth on him because he has no consistency. There's no consistency with his target share. There's no consistency with his play level. Last time they played the Seahawks, he had like 6 targets and not many points. So it just doesn't. It's not sticky with Marvin. He had a good week last week. I think he goes back to having a midweek this week, and I'm not playing Michael Wilson either in this matchup. The Chicago Bears at the San Francisco 49ers this week. DJ Moore, if he plays, you play the dude. I think I saw something earlier this week that he's only missed 2 games in his career. Like, this guy plays through everything, and he said as much regarding the injury. He's like, I play through everything, man. That's the player I love that type of player. I love DJ Moore, and I think that he's on a heater right now. And post Shane Waldron, it's working out. You play DJ Moore because the matchup is strong. Now, Juwan Jennings, I have said this over the weeks, I believe is most of the time a must-start player with Brock Purdy right now. Now, the matchup this week is brutal. Chicago is not friendly to wide receivers in fantasy football. They have a wall that is just like built up that it's hard to get past for receivers. And that's Jennings' problem here this week. High-end flex to me, to be honest with you, because he definitely is going to get volume in this game. I actually think Chicago is going to win this game, and I think that Juwan Jennings is going to be very involved. But how much what the efficiency level of it is, it remains to be seen because I don't like this matchup. But I do prefer him over Keenan Allen because I think Keenan Allen, a lot of people are relying right now on the fact that he has had, 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Don't rely on that. Those touchdowns could easily go away, and the target share is still there, so like you could definitely still play Keenan Allen, and he's a good high-end flex option this week, but he's not a must-start, and I prefer Jennings because he definitely could get in the end zone this week, whereas with Keenan, there could be any time where he does not get in the end zone, but he does have the target share, and I think that Deebo's easily the worst option this week. Deebo Samuel, I just think at this point, like, we haven't seen a ceiling game since like October, and I don't think it's coming back. He's not fully healthy. This team is in shambles. I just don't think that Deebo Samuel is much more than a low-end flex option at this point, honestly. And Rome Odunze is on sit territory right now because I think DJ is going to play. Now, of course, you could play Rome if you're in deeper leagues or, you've got Bipocalypse. You could play Rome Odunze. But I'm putting him here in the sit category because that's my way of showing you guys I think his ceiling with DJ Moore is very, very low. His target share has actually been pretty good. He's actually getting like 10 targets, 8 targets over the past month in these per game basis, but it just hasn't worked out. So if DJ Moore doesn't go, then Rome Odunze is definitely in Keenan Allen flex category, but as of right now, I don't think that's going to happen, and Ricky Pearsall at this point is irrelevant again. The Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Rams this week. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, obviously you fire both those guys up. It's a competitive matchup this week. Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Amari Cooper. They're basically all in the same tier for me. Whether Keon Coleman plays, that's still up for debate. He may or may not play in this game. I want to get in on him the moment that he comes back because this guy was breaking out before he went down with injury. So the moment that he comes back, I'm back in on the guy. So I think Khalil Shakir is the best because he's got the safest amount of targets per game, but Amari Cooper easily could go off in this type of game versus the Los Angeles Rams. I think that there's potential for a lot of scoring in this matchup, so I do like all Buffalo options as high-end to mid-end flex options. And I think that they're all better options than Demarcus Robinson, who continues to be a touchdown or bust type of play. The Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs, Sunday Night Football. No must-starts in here. If Ladd McConkey was fully healthy, I'd say he fits into must-start territory. But the problem that we're seeing right now is Ladd McConkey looks like a true questionable heading into Sunday Night Football. He was limited all week of practice, and I said this earlier in the week. I read Jim Harbaugh said before the week of practice started that he was worried he may not practice at all this week. So the fact that he even practiced actually sits pretty well in my book. So I think he may be leaning towards playing, but obviously since it's a Sunday night game and we do not have definitive evidence one way or the other right now, I am definitely nervous to play Ladd McConkey. So if you do not hear anything by noon on Sunday, you have to put Ladd McConkey on your bench unless you've got a Joshua Palmer or a Quentin Johnson that you can easily fill in. And I think QJ is the best option outside of Ladd over in Los Angeles because Joshua Palmer doesn't have ball skills that are better than my ball skills as I sit here talking to you guys from an office chair. Like, I just think I could go out there and catch the ball better than Joshua Palmer. Obviously, probably not. But Josh Palmer's ball skills are horrific. That's why I never talk about him like he's a good player. And then with DeAndre Hopkins and Xavier Worthy, they're both definitely playable options. Neither one of them has a super high ceiling at this point, but they both relatively stable floors, I would say. The Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys, our last matchup of the day. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they go into your lineup for sure. I don't know if they're going to have the same level of effort these days. I really don't. And I think the Cowboys matchup is deceptively tougher than it looks because of the way that they've been playing the last several weeks and because they're getting healthier on that defense. So I do think that there's potential for some issues here because the Bengals are basically out of playoff contention at this point. I don't know how much effort they put in at this point of the year, but I do say that you cannot sit either Bengals option right now. And then CeeDee Lamb looks like he's going to go. Based on what Jerry Jones said earlier in this week, and the guy's a lunatic at this point, so take what he said, I guess, with a grain of salt, but also CeeDee Lamb said, like, yeah, he's going to play this week. So he missed Thursday's practice. He practiced limited Friday, and pending his report on Saturday, I think CeeDee Lamb's going to play. I'm not particularly worried about him missing this game. And I think this matchup is a great game to play him in and be a must-start. Jalen Tolbert, I think he's definitely flexible, especially if CeeDee Lamb does not go. But again, the reason I like Jalen Tolbert regardless is because this matchup is strong. Like, the Bengals are horrific on defense. They're a horrendous defense. So I just think that ultimately Jalen Tolbert is probably a decent play regardless of whether CD plays or not. But obviously, if CD doesn't play, Tolbert is a really good play. So let me know how your lineup looks this week. And if you want to see where these wide receivers ranked in my top 30 this week, click on this video right here.